Hey, what's going on, y'all? I wanted to make a video about just kind of the reason why I left engineering because recently I've been getting some DMs about people who are thinking about doing the same thing, and actually also some hater ass DMs being like, "Who would do?" Which is just someone who's afraid of doing the same thing. Obviously, doesn't like the work they're doing. But the long and short of it is, I got an engineering degree from the University of Waterloo about 7 years back, 5-year program in nanotechnology engineering. You're probably wondering why nanotechnology, and I don't think anybody in the program knew. It was just this cool sounding degree, right? Nanotechnology, who doesn't want that? So I went for that. And if you're an immigrant watching this, you know that engineering is that's like the prophecy. You know what I mean? Like engineering, medicine, these are the lanes that are illuminated for you from a very young age. So even from at the age of 9, 10, I had it really kind of beaten into my head that this is that's the golden career. So I would always, even from a young age, be like, yeah, I want to be an engineer. I want to be an engineer. Kid would be like, what do you want to be? I'll be like, an engineer. Even if when you asked me when I was 17 what an engineer does, I'll be like, the engineer shit. You know what I mean? No idea. The University of Waterloo actually is a co-op internship program. So you actually have to do co-op placements throughout 5 or 6. Don't quote me on this, but 5 or 6 co-op placements. So you go to different workplaces, which is actually way better than other programs. So you actually get exposed to industry. But the problem is throughout your schooling, you're always in this mindset that if you start picking up on that vibe that maybe this isn't for me, what you tell yourself, or in the case of myself, I kept saying, oh, this is the vibe of an internship. You know what I mean? It'll be different once you graduate. Once you're a full engineer working a full-time job, then it'll be different, because the telltale signs were all there even from the internships. You know what I mean? I didn't really like any of the co-ops. I did R&D stuff. I did manufacturing placements. It never felt, it was clear that it was always a corporate environment, but in my mind, I was like, yeah, but these aren't the real jobs, right? Fast forward to me graduating and I moved to Troy, Michigan. I work in the Detroit automotive sector for a fuel manufacturer, like a supplier for the big 3. But the point is that the nature of the work itself was exactly what I had already been exposed to, but now reality was setting in. And I tried to cover it all up with getting a nice car and getting a nice place, trying to not address the issue head on that this isn't the work for me. It's not bad work. Engineering is not bad work. It's just that so many people go into it. So many of the people that were my coworkers clearly had no passion for this work. It's just one of those things that's deemed a respectable career choice that is going to have security with it. So you pursue it, right? It's as simple as that. And a lot of people get into it for that reason specifically. I'll tell you this, a lot of people are unhappy with it. They're like, oh, it's the status quo. You know what I mean? It's you get a good job that has good pay, and you get a house, you get a mortgage, you try to get an investment property, and then you try to climb the ladder there and then jump to the next place. And once you're in the corporate setting, they start telling you the game plan for how to do it in the corporate life. They're like, you'll never be able to get the high salary at this job. You got to go as high as you can here. Then you go to the next company, jump multiple positions, and then you come back and you leverage that experience for higher. All the conversation throughout all the jobs I ever had, and I worked in the automotive sector and I worked in the Silicon Valley startup tech sector, it was always surrounding maximizing your earning potential, period. There was never a question yeah, I just don't like the product, or I don't. It was just kind of yeah, they offered me this, so I went. So it was pure money. And that's life for most people, and that's fine. And that's what I prioritized for most of my life. But then at one point that hits a wall, and I wouldn't have believed it. Even if you told me in high school, hey, at one point you're going to make more than you thought you'll be making in 5 years from now, and it's not going to feel good. I'd be like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? You have a nice lease. As long as I have a nice car and a nice place, how could I be? No, at one point you hit a wall. For the first couple of years, I would essentially be working, the 10 to 6, and I wasn't even having bad hours, right? Some people have 8 to 5:30 or whatever. I had usually 9:30 or 10 to 6 hours. So my hours were actually good, but the work itself for me specifically was always kind of being a liaison between my company and the customer. I did program management for the mechanical engineering firm, and in Silicon Valley, I was an operations program manager. So that job focuses mostly on just talking on the phone, emailing, drafting emails, running open issues. So it's all just communication. In school, you think you're going to be designing stuff, and you are quite integral at times to actually part of designing, but the work itself is not as colorful and exciting as you may think. And I worked with people who are truly passionate and they loved what they were doing. So it's not like engineering is something that to avoid completely. No, it's like people that have that analytical troubleshooting mind. They love to take things apart, put them back together or figure out how they work. That's a good starting place for you, engineering. It may not be the end career you get, but it's a good starting place. For me, that was never me. That was never me. It was literally just the immigrant dream sold on. That's why I always like that Billy Talent song. What was it called? Worker Bees? Boy, you always did what he was told. You know what I mean? That literally applies to me. I went to school with so many kids who we were all in nanotechnology engineering just because we knew we had to choose an engineering. So many kids I went to school with clearly had the vibe that it's either be a doctor or be an engineer, and I don't feel like doing medical school. And I felt the exact same way. Once you get into the thick of things, it's so hard to get out of it. And it took me 2.5 years of being in Detroit, of just being really unhappy and not realizing it, because I leased this car, a BMW. I love cars, and I leased it, and for a year it was awesome. And then for the first 6 months of the second year, it was starting to peel back, where it's like, okay, the novelty is wearing off. And then that second year is like really when I was starting to have like a crisis. It was the first time in my life that I actually got a book, nonfiction self-help style book, because I was so conceited and arrogant to think like, who are all these people reading self-help books? They don't know what they want in their life. Even as a 23-year-old, I thought that. But then comes to the point where I'm having this, I'm around 25 years old, and I'm like, okay, this is not for me, and I have this existential crisis. I hate waking up and going into work. I just don't want to do it. This isn't for me. And I read a great book by Larry Smith, who's a prof at the University of Waterloo, called No Fears, No Excuses, Why You'll Fail to Have a Great Career. And the gist of the book, the takeaway of the book was, if you don't do something out of passion, sooner or later, you're going to hit a wall. And people say this all the time, right? Oh, find your passion, find your passion. And to a lot of people, that's like, okay, it's a pipe dream, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But I felt like that. I was like, I hate what I'm doing, and I'm willing to just get input and advice from anybody. And that really stuck with me. It's like, yo, right now at this low level that I'm doing this engineering, it's all good. At one point, once as I climb the ladder, I'm going to be going up against people who truly love the work they do. And at that point, I'm just going to be weeded out, because I'm like, it's going to be clear that I'm not the guy for the job. At that point, I always loved doing stand-up. Sorry, scratch that. I always loved watching stand-up. It was like years and years I would watch stand-up almost every day. And that was the moment after I read that book that it clicked. Why can't I do stand-up? Why not? I'm fucking around. Every place I've ever gone, I've been fucking around. You know, why can't I? It's just my immigrant mindset never let me think that an art was a legitimate path for a career. Once I kind of like switched that off, I found an open mic, and I started doing these open mics, and I was like, oh, like I'm bombing like crazy, and it's killing me inside, but still that existential like crisis is peeling back, because I'm like, oh, this is a true path I can go down. I don't know how many years it's going to take, but I get a feeling out of this. It's like when you try to sand something against the grain, when you switch to with the grain, you know that feeling of like, oh, okay, that's pretty much what happened with me. Just like feeling wise, I felt that. So I was like, okay, this is the path. In the middle of all this, I still was kind of like a little convinced that, okay, I still need to do engineering for a while, because I can't just jump ship. I can't just jump ship into open mics, you know what I mean? So in my mind, still clinging to this idea that, oh, it's not the job, it's something else. I'm like, Michigan is the problem. I need to move to California. California's sick. When I get to California, then I'll be happy. So then I go to Silicon Valley, and it's way worse there. It's way worse in the sense that the whole work-life balance disappears. At least in Michigan, there was a corporate 9-to-5-ish vibe of like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, we're designing it, and it's like everyone is doing, Thanksgiving and stuff like that. It's more old America, so it's like no one's burning the midnight oil, so to speak. But in Silicon Valley, it's so many people that come in from all over the world. So it's like work is their priority. Grinding is like priority. Leaving at 6 or 7, you're like, oh, this guy doesn't want it. Like, and these are people that aren't necessarily passionate about what they do. They just see the work culture and politics that are necessary to excel, and they just play the game. So I moved to a place where it's like everyone's way more gung-ho about playing the game of like that startup talk and like open concept play. And it was the worst. But stand-up was way better. The stand-up scene was way better in San Francisco than it was in Detroit. So I just immersed myself in that. I was doing consulting at some company, and they offered me a full-time position, and I said no. And pretty much the contract ended my company over them that I actually worked for was like, oh, okay, we don't have a contract to put you on. You're done. So they let me go. And the company I was actually consulting at, they go bankrupt in like a month after that. So even if I took the job, it was done. And I don't know, I think I signed NDAs, but like it wasn't going to work out for them anyways. There was enough issues. and if you work there, you know. So I go back to Canada and I essentially just immersed myself. I moved to Toronto, started the podcast, The Immigrant Section. Check that out on this channel. Click here. I'll put a playlist here. It was the best decision I ever made. And like till this day, I'm not even, as far as income wise, I'm turning 30. And back when I was 25, I was making 4 times what I'm making right now from like commercials and random stuff, you know what I mean? And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I know it sounds crazy to a lot of people, but it's like, if you could wake up and just feel good about what you're gonna go do, it's worth so much more than money. And again, a lot of people have they maybe have families or sending money back home or whatever, a higher pressure scenario of actual financial obligation. I get that, but still, I realized that at 25, 26, I'm like, people work till they're 60. I can't do this for 35 more years for the sake of money. So it's like, really think about what it is that you do regardless on a daily basis, and at least start with trying to shift more into that thing, whether it's gaming, movies, whatever it is, you know what I mean? Start there. No one said this to me when I was young, and I think it would have really saved me a lot of time, but I don't make no regrets. I am where I am and I'm happy where I'm at. But anyways, a lot of people were like, who leaves this thing, or I want to do it, but I'm afraid. It's like, think about what you're really good at and start there. Look into how you can get your foot into an industry you truly are passionate about. I'm not saying jump ship. And in my case, I was too much of a bitch to jump ship. I actually had to get let go to be like, oh, thank God, I'm out. Would I have resigned otherwise? Eventually, probably, but not that fast. It's your life. I mean, the feeling of just being like, just loving what you do is freaking amazing. Forget the money will come. If you love it, the money will come. And even if it doesn't, it's a way better life. I'll tell you that. It's a way better life. I miss the Beamer though, but in time, it'll all work out. But anyways, I just wanted to hop on, share that. If you want to drop any questions in the comments, I'd actually just, I'd have no issue, giving you my little feedback or whatever. But yeah, I'm no expert in this shit, but I just want to share my experience. I know a lot of engineers have left their career for a million things. So whatever your shit is, if you have that feeling where like this isn't right, you can change, you can find your thing. And there's always time. There's no like, oh, I'm 35. No, it's like, you're going to work till 60. So what? You're just going to keep being like, fuck it for 25 more years? That's crazy, right? That's actually the crazier path. I think I'll leave it at that. That's a pretty good ending spot. Yo, subscribe to the channel. Check out the Immigrant Section podcast. I've got some stand-up here, some sketches, whatever. Check out the stuff. And I hope this has been of some entertainment or of some value to you. Thank you. Peace.